meeting to order this morning. This is the first of a series of 7 meetings of the Greater Columbus Infant Mortality Task Force. And on behalf of my co-chair, Donna James, welcome to all of you. We appreciate your commitment and your time to this very important work. While I know most of the task force probably knows each other, because of the amount of work we have ahead of us, we're going to forego formal introductions at this point. You all have a binder, a book in front of you, which includes bios and information and a roster on everyone, contact information. I encourage you, when you have time, spend a few minutes with that. And for anyone you don't know, that'll help you get a little more familiar. But like I said, most of you know each other already. We also have many guests here, and we are certainly thrilled and happy that so many people came today. Thank you. The task force does have a good amount of work to accomplish, and only 7 meetings. So for that reason, chances are that will not afford us a lot of time for a lot of discussion from our guests. However, in addition to these task force meetings, we plan to deploy a comprehensive community engagement process, and there will be additional meetings. And in those meetings, we encourage interested stakeholders to attend, to participate, to share your thoughts. This process is meant to be engaging community-wide, and it is important that we hear from as many constituents as we can, and that will be the best venue for many of you to participate. Don is going to talk about those meetings in just a little bit. As you can see from the agenda, we do have a very full meeting planned this morning. Our first objective is to better understand the information, the data, primary contributors to this problem, and initial ideas on where we need to focus our attention to begin to solve the issues. Before we get started, we want to make sure that the committee is very clear on our goals, on our process, and our expectations. With that, I'm going to ask Donna James to start.
Thank you, Michael, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to work. We changed the weather for you so it wouldn't be so harsh on you getting here this morning. We couldn't quite get the sun out, but maybe we'll work on that for the afternoon. But we'll certainly make some sunshine in here around the work we have ahead of us. So let's start off talking about our goals. You'll hear more about this from our national and state experts this morning, but I want to illustrate the challenge we have ahead of us. If you take a look at our current trend lines against the goals we have set, to achieve a 40% reduction in infant mortality and cut the disparity gap in half will require, as you can see, a dramatic change in course. To accomplish this, we will have to reduce infant mortality across all races, but most notably, we'll have to cut Black infant mortality by 60%. I want to take a moment to translate these rates into human terms. If we accomplish our goals, that would mean, I think it's 150 more babies in this community would live to reach their full potential. So put your head and heart around that when we talk about the power and the importance of this work. Each of us would likely be sitting around this table if we knew we could save even one child. So the work is meaningful, and we know these goals are aggressive for our community and aggressive compared to any community around the country, for that matter. So we hope this can appeal to your competitive nature as well as to your head and your heartstrings. Now let's take a look at process. The next slide is a key driver diagram, and this is what we've used to structure the work that we have before us. It illustrates those things that cause infant mortality in our city in rank order of significance. And I know we'll have lots of conversations about all of the issues. Some of you might not think they're on this list, but we really are trying to go for high and immediate impact as well as sustained long-term engagement around all the issues that affect our children. In our community, two areas where we have the biggest impact are prematurity and sudden infant death, SUIDs. So note on the slide, congenital, and this is not me, congenital anomalies is a key driver, but there are numerous causes, such as genetics, that are much more challenging to impact. So we're going to recognize the things we can do and the things that we can but will be a little more difficult to do. Hence, prematurity and SUIDs are our high impact opportunities. In addition, many of the strategies to address prematurity will also have an impact on congenital anomalies. We have 7 meetings in total, and we will address key issues across those meetings in a very deliberate way. You can see from the next slide in front of you the subject matter we intend to address in each of our meetings and how it relates to each key driver. The way we structure each conversation will be very deliberate as well. In each one of the content areas, we'll examine the current data, we'll educate ourselves on the evidence and best practices. And I'm saying evidence and best practices because this is a place I am finding the more I think I know and I start to learn, the more I realize I don't know. And so best practices without evidence, not a good equation. We have to have both. And we're also going to learn what we're doing now in our own community and identify true gaps, gaps that will lead us to specific recommendations. We will be developing high-level recommendations as we go so that we can all join and engage and understand the process along the way. As Michael mentioned, in addition to our meetings, we will have a robust conversation in the community that will also inform our work. You have to think about this process in 2 stages. There is the task force here, but even we as a task force have to go out and engage in conversations with the community. So I think many of us will be not just in this room, but in several rooms around the community, making sure we are carrying voices and messages of understanding as well as educating on where we are in the progress and what the next steps are. Our community engagement strategy will include the media through traditional and social media. My good friend, new good friend who will speak to you this morning reminded me we're going to get tired of saying this. Until we've said it, I'm going to say 200 times, we will not have said it enough. So media will help us with getting our message out, but also getting information out from an educational perspective. Interactive workshops within the community with our stakeholders, and a speakers bureau of people to carry the message and the information and foster dialogue around this. So it's not just what we do here that matters, it will be what we do in the rest of the community now and in the long run. So in the meantime, we encourage community members to reach out to the task force staff or provide input via our website to find out where these community engagement opportunities will be. Website, www.gcinfantmortality.org. And Mike, I'm going to hand it back over to you to talk about the task force members' role.
So let me talk a little bit about expectations. But before I do that again, I'll thank the task force for agreeing to participate. We know your time is valuable. We know there's a lot of pulling and tugging from time to time on your time. There's been a lot of discussion recently about education in our community, and what more important a mission than the education and the health and welfare of the youngest people in our community. This is an area that we rank lower than we need to, both in the state of Ohio and the state of Ohio in the country as a whole. And we're convinced in our early research we can make a difference, and this is the group that will make a difference. So this is a very important mission. We're glad you're here. We expect all of you to participate in all 7 meetings. It's only 7 meetings. The meetings are scheduled. They're on your calendars. We're then going to ask that we reconvene at least in a couple of years, once a year, so that this is not a one and done kind of effort. We're comfortable if you will, that we're going to be able to make a difference, but we also want to hold ourselves accountable. So we will reconvene once a year to monitor the improvements and the progress towards these goals. We don't want this to end in 7 meetings. We want this to be an ongoing effort. We want this group to stay engaged and to be accountable to continue to make an impact in this community. This group needs to collectively own this problem and to see it through. This group needs to adopt a no excuses attitude toward this. If nothing else in this community, Donna said it, we're competitive. And I think if nothing else, that'll drive us. Infant mortality here is also, as Donna said, a very complex problem influenced by many, many factors in many different areas. In fact, it's bigger than the work of this task force, let's face it. We need to recognize this, but we can't let these larger challenges as a whole impede our ability to take ownership of that which we can fix. And that's our mission, starting today. We must all participate in this dialogue. While we get summary reports from the community engagement efforts, it's important that for each of us to actively participate. Some of these conversations need to be heard here and need to be heard firsthand. The more we hear from each of you and the more we hear about the problem, the easier it'll be for us to deal with it. I want to start by acknowledging the City of Columbus, President Ginther for getting us started, the Columbus Foundation, both of which are providing initial funding for us, as well as the county commissioners. Without your help and without your support, we wouldn't have been able to start. I want to introduce you to 2 members of the task force staff as well, Jesse Cannon from Nationwide Children's Hospital and Julie Robbins, a consultant to Columbus Public Health. Probably without the 2 of them, we wouldn't be here yet this morning. So thank you. Sandy Harbrecht also, as all of you know from Paul Worth, is supporting the public engagement component of our work. You'll also meet others from all 3 of these organizations over the course of our meetings to work on different aspects of this. And you should also, from time to time, feel free to reach out to them. Their contact information's in your books. So before I introduce our first speaker, any questions on the role of the committee? Hearing none, it's my pleasure to introduce the First Lady of Ohio, and thank you, Karen, for your commitment and your willingness to lead this process. Karen Kasich.
Thank you, Michael, and welcome task force members. First of all, thank you for having me as your honorary chair. The honor is indeed all of mine to be here with this esteemed group. Thank you. I first became aware of infant mortality about 20 years ago when I worked on a project to reduce infant mortality at Grant Medical Center. And that's when I learned of the complexity of the issue, and that's when I learned of the seriousness of the issue. But after I moved on from the hospital, infant mortality kind of went off my radar screen. So imagine my surprise when Sandy Harbrecht reached out to me and asked me to join this group and showed me the chart about the infant mortality rates, and I looked at it and thought, wow, nothing's really changed. Sure, it's dipped here and there, it's risen here and there, but overall, nothing is really changed, and this task force has a lot of serious hard work to do, like Michael and Donna mentioned. But I know that we're up for the challenge. I am really proud of the people in this room for taking the time to make the commitment to this important issue, and I'm honored to share the room with such an esteemed group. So I thank you because I know that you join me in believing that Ohio's children deserve a better start. I believe that our children are our most precious natural resource in this state, and I want to work with you to reduce infant mortality not only in the city but then also in the state of Ohio. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you for having me along.
Thank you very much, Karen. We really appreciate that. And to have our First Lady of Ohio here with us lets us know that we've got all the right people on our side. So thank you. So my next duty is to introduce the gentleman that helped to kickstart all of this. President of our City Council, the Honorable Andy Ginther. Andy.
Thank you, Donna, and good morning to all of our task force members and to the overwhelming turnout this morning from the community. First of all, let me say what an honor it is to be here this morning with you. But also I want to make a special note of thanks to Dr. Long and Dr. Allen for agreeing to help shape and facilitate and lead this process. We're really blessed to have our state's First Lady, Karen Kasich, taking time out of all the other things on her agenda and schedule to help champion this effort. Karen, thank you for spending the time and helping us on this critical issue. We're thankful for your involvement in this work, and I believe, as I committed to the governor just a week or so ago at the King Day Breakfast here in Columbus, that the strategies this group, in partnership with the community, will come up with for Columbus can help reduce infant mortality statewide. As many of you know, more babies are born in Franklin County than any other county in the state of Ohio. And so it's fitting that this task force and this county and this community will lead the way in healthier, brighter futures for kids across the state. As you've already heard, our co-chairs, Michael Fiorelli and Donna James, are committed to this effort, and I'm profoundly grateful to them for accepting this challenge and leading the way. Everyone serving on this task force is doing so because they believe, as I do, that Columbus's infant mortality rate is unacceptable and inconsistent with our community's values. So thank you for taking the time to turn your belief into action. Our mission in charge, I am told, is one of the most ambitious in the country: to reduce infant mortality rate this community over the next 10 years by 40% and cut the racial disparity in half. And as I look around this room, I'm not just confident, but certain that we as a community are equal to the task ahead. So when I first learned about the crisis we're facing, and make no mistake, our infant mortality rate is a public health crisis, my thoughts turned naturally to my own daughter. It was actually last July with a statewide group that Dr. James had invited me to address over at the Lincoln Theater not far away from here. It was Clara's, my daughter's, 3rd birthday. I was leaving that event to go celebrate her birthday party with her. And as I left, it struck me that over the course of a year, 150 fathers wouldn't be celebrating their child's 1st birthday with them. So as you can imagine, I can't imagine my life without my daughter. Can't even fathom the grief and sorrow of parents who have lost their children. We announced the creation of this task force in November of 2013. In that month, in this community, 11 babies died before the age of 1. Every week in our community, 3 families suffer the death of a child before his or her 1st birthday. Behind these numbers lie stories of unspeakable anguish, and the tragedy is compounded by the fact that most of these deaths are preventable. We're going to do something about it. And we're going to address this crisis the Columbus way, by working together as partners, bringing all of our community strengths to bear until the day when all of our children have the chance to live healthy and happy lives. Going forward, I pledge to you that the work of this task force will be thorough, efficient, and open to the public. Moreover, the task force will have all the resources you need to complete your work. To that end, I want to thank the City of Columbus, Access Health Columbus, Nationwide Children's Hospital, and the Columbus Foundation for helping to support our work. I believe we now have a video that will make the case to our community that now is the time to solve our infant mortality crisis. And quite honestly, we wouldn't have this outstanding video without Michael's generosity and WBNS's support in filming and producing this short video. In closing, our children are counting on us. We will not let them down. Thank you all for your commitment this morning and the months and years ahead as we make Columbus's future brighter by improving the lives of our youngest citizens. Thank you.
I was at work and I got a frantic phone call from my wife. It's just not something I've ever heard in her voice before. And she was just sobbing uncontrollably. The lieutenant from the fire department took the phone from her. Hey, Mr. Hurd, I'm the lieutenant with the fire department, and your son didn't make it. I fell to the ground, like my legs just went out from under me. Easily the worst day of my life.
Columbus is a world-class city. We have a thriving economy with stable, good-paying jobs. We have one of the country's lowest unemployment rates, great neighborhoods, and a quality of life that is second to none. Yet, as great as our community is, some of our most vulnerable residents are being left behind. They need our help. Every year in Columbus, more than 150 babies die before their first birthday. That's enough children to fill 5 kindergarten classes. Our infant mortality rate is twice that of New York City. And African American babies in our community are 2.5 times more likely than white babies to die before they reach the age of 1. What's worse, it doesn't have to be this way. Other communities have taken successful steps to reduce infant mortality. Columbus can do the same. This video describes the toll on our community and the case for change. It's a crisis that our state and community leaders and the professionals who deal with it every day all agree must be solved.
So Will never made it to the hospital. He basically was pronounced at the scene. 12 weeks later, we got a report from the coroner's office, and it listed it as sudden, unexplained infant death. And when something like this happens, especially so unexpectedly, it just knocks you for a loop.
This is a tremendous problem. It greatly affects the community. Infant mortality is kind of looked on as a barometer of the health care and the community overall. I don't think we have a great appreciation for how important and how tragic this is. As you know, we rank in the lower part of the country as far as the infant mortality rate, and we've got a tremendous job to do. 3 to 4 babies die per week here in the city of Columbus, and oftentimes on the news we hear about homicides and things like that, and these silent deaths go unnoticed by the majority of the population. And I hope we can raise enough awareness to show how important this is. For every 1 white baby that dies, we have 2 African American babies that die. So you can see there's even a health disparity there in terms of this infant mortality. And it's tragic when you think that these potentially are lost lives and how they affect not only those families but the community at whole.
Well, infant mortality is the true measure of the community's health. And so when you have a high infant mortality rate like we do here in Columbus, it's an indicator that something's not healthy in the community. And as a public health practitioner, I feel that there's something we have to do to address that, to reduce our numbers. Our numbers are much higher than other communities, other cities of our same size. So we need to work together to address this issue to help the public health here in Columbus. Health is really more than health care. We live in a great community with great hospital systems. So access to care care is not the only issue. Sometimes there are things before a mother gets pregnant, making sure that she's healthy, making sure she has safe housing, making sure she has food, nutritious food, making sure that she lives in a safe community.
Where I live at now is, violence every day, gunshots every night, so you do have to worry about, my child growing up in that neighborhood and me being able to make a difference. A cousin of mine, she had lost a baby, and another cousin of mine had lost a baby while she was pregnant, and that was hard for me.
We see babies, almost weekly here. Most of those deaths are sleep-related deaths. So, when we see those, we're trying to determine a cause of death, and sometimes they're usually undetermined because there is no specific disease process that these babies are dying from. We never get used to seeing babies on our table, and that's because most baby deaths are preventable.
The reality is, this happens to everyone. This happens regardless of race, regardless of economic status, regardless of where you live in the country, where you live in the world. This happens to everyone, and it really is important for people to know.
This is not just a problem for the city, this is a problem for the state, and therefore it's a priority for the state. So we've been given a great opportunity to gather our resources, refine our ideas, and move forward. First and foremost, I'm a mom. I gave birth to premature twins. This issue is important to me. Every child deserves a healthy start, and the more we can encourage healthy pregnancies and healthy first years of life, the better off our children and our communities will be.
We have the resources, expertise, and commitment to do something about it. We can do better. We must do better. And with your help, we will do better. All children in our community deserve to live healthy and happy lives. And it is up to all of us to make sure they get that chance. They are counting on us. We will not let them down.
So maybe we'll start every meeting with that video as we get started here, huh? Let me again thank First Lady Karen Kasich for your involvement, Council President Andy Ginther, and the Franklin County Commissioners and Commissioner John O'Grady. Thanks again for getting us organized here today and your support. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Magda Peck. Dr. Peck is a national healthcare leader dedicated to improving the health and well-being of women and children. She is the founding dean of the Joseph J. Zilber School of Public Health at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She is a senior advisor, founder, and former CEO of CityMatch, a national organization of urban maternal and child health leaders. Dr. Peck holds master's and doctoral degrees from the Harvard School of Public Health. Dr. Peck?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's going to take tremendous energy for us to see this through. So let me again to say how humbling it is to cross from Milwaukee to another great Midwestern city of Columbus. And as an East Coast Philly girl who's been in Milwaukee for about 22 months, you have to get out of town to say the things you'd like to say in your own town. So I'm just seeing this as the most extraordinary opportunity that I need to earn back home in my new home, because we've got the same challenge that you do. Your babies are our babies. Now, I have about 50 minutes of your time, and I want to use that time extraordinarily wisely. So I could go through a long list of many thank yous, but let me just do this. Thank you. And thank you so much for leading the way, for leading the way, for leading the way. I said to Donna, who I knew needed to step out because of another situation, that we should create some ground rules of doing this work together. I've been working with cities around the country for 25 years, And I'd like to create a no-guilt zone. That means that we're going to employ the business principles of open space technology, which means that we employ the practice of the law of 2 feet. Have you ever heard of the law of 2 feet? Hands up. I got a few. Here's what it means. If you're not contributing or you're not learning, take your 2 feet to where you can and will, because we have no room for dead space here. We have a very hard job to do. So if you've got to work on your cell phone, your BlackBerry, your whatever it is called these days, you don't need to hide it. I don't take any offense. If that's what you need to pay attention to, we have very busy people here. So do whatever it is that allows you to be present. And if you need to step away, and ask the person next to you to catch you up so we keep moving. Deal?
Deal. Deal.
If you hear a word today that you cannot explain with comfort and ease to someone else, like congenital anomaly, then I encourage you to create the greatest opportunity with the greatest humility to do this. I don't know. What's that mean? Tell me more. You knock at me or anyone else, we stop, because if we don't have common language, we in fact will leave folks behind. And this is not about community engagement, and therefore some folks, I would bet if I were to ask a majority of you to tell me what is the background of congenital anomalies, you probably couldn't say, and that's okay. The most powerful words we as a community can say is, I don't know, tell me more, let us learn. So I'm going to ask you to knock bravely and stand and say what you do not know. Because in that position of humility, we will find our way through. I want to acknowledge that this is the right time, the right place, the right folks. And if you're wondering, well, why isn't so-and-so here? Get over it. Because the bottom line is we move ahead and folks will catch up. As my parents would say, this is a no whining zone. Whining is the least effective characteristics of those of us in public health. I own it. So I'd like to declare that, at least for my time with you today. I'd like to recognize that some people can't be with us today. We will call them Elijah chairs. As a Jewish girl from Philly at the Passover Seder, you always leave a seat for Elijah, the prophet who will come and visit us and give us insight. So they'll come next time. There'll always be space. I'd like, lastly, to dedicate today not only to Clara, who sounds like she's a spitfire and the apple of her dad's eye, but to baby A.J. Dalton, whose obituary appeared in the Dispatch yesterday. I believe in reading the obituaries every day in every city I visit. And I'm always struck why there are no obituaries that we see for the 150 or 60 or 70 or 80 babies that die in this town. These are invisible events. This one happens to be a sweet 5 months old who was called home. And I want to say we can do better for AJ as well as for Cece. So with that, allow me to cue up whoever's doing my slides. I'd love them to pull it up, because this isn't it. And if I do that, it's a magic. And may the technology not fail us today, because it always fails us. And with that, could you please just join me in thanking the AV guys who make it happen. Woo! So we're going to talk about too many, too small, too soon, and too wide again. This is one of the oldest conversations in America and around the world. And I've been noticing that I could have taken this slide and shifted it to 1910 or the 1800s, but the first vital statistics only kicked in the early 1900s. We've had about 100 years worth of data. It's fine to start in 1935, which is great because it also was the start of the Social Security Act and the first investment of our nation in policy directed at women and children called Title V, which funds a number of your programs here. So 1935 is a great date, but I'd like you to see that on the left-hand side, we have what the rate is, and you'll be hearing a lot about rates, but remember that it was above 50, 60, 85. And on the right-hand side is the gap between black and white. And you will notice that, in fact, the gap has been rising all along, but extraordinarily so. So if you take on a goal of 50% cut it in half, that gap, in the next 10 years, and bring the overall rate down, you're in good company with something we've been trying to do for a long time. In my city of Milwaukee, we are, as you will see in Dr. James's slide, we started a place even more egregious and more unacceptable than Columbus. Great, so we win because we have more babies that die proportionally. It's a hell of a game to feel like we're competitive about. I'd rather I compete on saving lives. And so I am distressed by the slow nature of this. And when we stand at 9.6, and it may have an uptick this year, I come to you as the founding dean of the newest school of public health in the nation, founded as an urban school, founded as an opportunity to take on well-being and health, but also that we are a driver of economic prosperity. This is not a health-specific thing or a healthcare thing. This is about making southeastern Wisconsin one of the most robust economies in the nation on the fresh coast of America. We also are the most hyper-segregated city in America, and the most unconscionable disparities worse than here. So as a fourth wave school, we are explicitly committed to social and environmental justice, addressing equity and social determinants, and we pledge to be your partners for the region because your babies are our babies. And towards that end, we want to be a catalyst so that Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Columbus can compete as to who will be the healthiest city in America in one generation. That is a competition I'll take on with you anytime, anywhere. Now, for those of you who get bored with these kinds of PowerPoint stuff, and I'm not going to be talking at you too long, let me go right to the bottom line and give you the summary slides right up front. So you don't have to wait for it, because some folks are wired to want to say, show it to me now. Nice show, but show it to me now. So let me just tell you this. I'm going to be today acting like a flight attendant, kicking you off on this journey. I'm going to encourage you to put your seatbacks up, to be able to fasten your seatbelts, because in fact it's turbulent out there on this ride that you're about to take together, building on the rides that have come before. I'm going to tell you 7 things, bottom line, real quick, and then I'm going to elucidate them, then I'll come back to them and give a little time for some question and answer. So far, so good? Yeah. Okay. My flight instruction to you, one is, don't be afraid of the BHAG. Has anybody ever heard of a BHAG before? Anybody not? Anybody want to practice knocking? Anyone know how to practice knocking? If you don't know what it is, would you knock? Of our task force members? You all know what BHAG is then. Fabulous. Anybody in the audience not know? Can you put your hands up if you've never heard of a BHAG before? Thank you for the bravery to say I don't know. In fact, it stands for a big, hairy, audacious goal. It's when you shoot for the moon. It's saying, yes, it's probably unlikely, and how could we dare to do anything less than that? So I'm saying to you, you have set, particularly in the reduction of the black-white disparity by 50% in 10 years, it's the boldest in the nation. It's a really juicy BHAG, and stick to it. Second, in that, be careful about monitoring and measuring well and wisely with metrics that go beyond infant health, because otherwise you're a setup for disappointment. Disappointment equals expectations minus reality. It's a basic formula. And so you either control the reality or control the expectations. But if you have a chronic disappointment in your town, you won't lift it up. So it's a tension in taking this on. Third thing I'm going to tell you is to go boldly upstream, because all that we're doing in healthcare, with all due respect to the most extraordinary children's hospital in town and other health systems like Ohio Health, we have the best quality of care right here in Columbus. It's extraordinary. You give me a tiny baby, put them in one of your NICUs, I have no doubt the best possible outcome will happen. I want to know how she was born so small, so soon to begin with, which is beyond your control. So go upstream, not just healthcare. And remember that right now we're investing for a much later return, so there will have to be some delayed gratification in what we're doing. I'm going to talk to you about reframing infant mortality as not just being about Ohio's babies, Columbus's babies, but frankly, the women in this town. You have healthy women, you have healthy children, you have healthy families, you have healthy economic development. This is a millennial goal under WHO. This is part of global economic development. Women are the turning point of vitality. So we can't just talk about the babies, because women will always put ourselves at the end of the line. Everyone eats first, everyone gets served first. You know what I'm talking about? This is the opportunity to bring back together public health and healthcare. We've been divorced for way too long. 100 years ago, we hung together, and then we got separated. And I think that infant mortality is the best issue to reunite the best of healthcare and the best of population health and prevention. And I'm going to ask you to think about this in terms of human security. New language, human security. The ability that says that if we bring together education and environment and economic development, we will have urban prosperity. This cannot only be about small babies dying, it's about the vitality and the future of this amazing city. You can't do it unless babies live and thrive. So I'm done, right? Okay, that's the bottom line. And I'm just going to go dig deeper. But if for those of you who needed to leave early, or for the press, or what have you, that's the Cliff Notes. So far, so good? Keep going. So I come here today with huge humility and a way to say, let me come back anytime. I'm on call to you. It's like the most exciting thing that's happening in the country right here. And you should know that I am wildly optimistic about what you're about to do. And I've been around for a while, so for me to feel optimistic, which is my DNA, but to be wildly optimistic, let me tell you why. I see that there is finally a sense of urgency. I heard it today. I've been hearing, you got to do something about this. This is unacceptable. Make it happen. Now, on my watch. I've also heard that there are resources that can be brought to bear, and it's not only money, but it can't be done in a revenue-neutral way. The question is, how do we be smart about the next investment so we get a good return? And then, third, we have not only at this esteemed table, and not only in the room today, but legions and legions behind of champions who frankly have been toiling for a long time. And the fact that you step up to this and say, us, now, here, oh, that's huge. Now, my mentor, Julie Richmond, who was the Surgeon General under the Carter administration and one of my first professors at Harvard, who once told me in my first semester of graduate school, sitting in some seminar room at the age of 25, long time ago, he said to me, you know, it takes 3 things to make things happen for major policy change. He's the founder of Head Start. He's the one who led to the smoking ban on airplanes. He's the one who put the first stickers. We have the 50-year report of the Surgeon General about warning signals and tobacco and health. This is the guy, invisible hero, Julius Richmond. South side of Chicago, died about 5 years ago at the age of 93. What Dr. Richmond said is, it takes 3 things if we're going to make it happen. You better bring together everything we know, the best science, the best knowledge, the best research, the best information, the best data. We better get the best social strategy, evidence-based stuff that works. The most important thing, he said, is without the political will, you are dead in the water. You have a cool project that gets funded, it'll last for a while, and then it'll die and go away. Let me also say that all of these slides will be available for you, so you don't have to take them on your perfect iPad if you don't need to. I just believe in doing just-in-time delivery so that they're fresh, but anything I have, I give away. Is that okay? Great, okay. So these are the 3 things I put in a different way. If we're going to have power tools to make this amazing, robust, bold change for infant mortality right here in Columbus, we better have 3 things. research and data, and you'll get a lot of it. And over the next 7 meetings, you're going to be inundated with so much that is already known. Inhale it, integrate it, learn it, use it. You will hear about programs that work, that are evidence-based. The fact that infant mortality rates in New York and in Boston are so much better than here, what did that take? And it's not just a major difference in demographics. We'll hear about that. But again, without the political will that this task force brings, it is going nowhere soon. So that you're in it for the long haul, at this level of commitment, and it's not just the public health department singing its tune, this is different. This is extraordinary. This is a magical moment. And I just hope you appreciate the significance of your being here at this time, when in fact it is about to tip. I am also extraordinarily optimistic because I think this is one of the smarter communities I have worked with in the country. And here's another sort of buster of things that might get in the way. There will be resistance to this work no matter what you do. There will be pushback. There will be folks who don't believe, folks who don't think that the right people, there's a lot of don'ts, dot, 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 dot. Resistance is there. I say, fine, that's great. But for hard work like addressing infant mortality, we need to be able to put this formula into play, and I'm not sure if folks have ever seen this one before. Comes from the business literature, Beckholder's the source, Harvard Business Review. I bring practices from great business into this work because we should be informed by best business practice in doing this job. Here's what it says. D times V times F has got to be greater than R. So what's D? What's V? What's F? D means dissatisfaction, V means vision, and F means first steps. If you get stuck it all along the way, this is a way to deconstruct what's in your way. Don't fight the resistance. Go to the other side of the equation. Here's something you can do. Is there enough dissatisfaction that these babies are dying? Or are there some who say, not my babies, those babies? Is there some true underlying complacency, don't care? As long as you have some dissatisfaction, fuel it. This makes me so sad because she is too wide and baby is too small and he was born too soon, and this is something we can do something about. But if in fact you have not enough dissatisfaction, which is what your job is, to not just increase awareness, but get people ticked off. Not in my town. Those are my babies. That's our future workforce. This is a blame and shame on us. Time, it stops now. So I don't know if your dissatisfaction is high enough. I encourage you as a task force to stoke a little bit of it. You don't need a lot. It just has to be more than zero. This was actually an airport picture, given my flight was 12 hours late. You know, we could learn something from that industry. The V piece is what you have in spades. 50% reduction in disparity in 10 years, significant decrease by 40% overall. There's no loss of imagination of what you have. So I'm not worried about this piece. I just encourage you to be bold and think something that you can't even imagine you can accomplish so that you don't sell yourself short. And you have an F. Besides all the small things that are already happening, probably pretty fragmented and probably disconnected. There's a lot of work already going on in this community. It just hasn't coalesced towards one common movement. You have this task force. You're in it. So think about this formula overall as a way of being able to get you unstuck. And because I see all three aligned, I am wildly optimistic. I am optimistic for you in kicking this off, because I think Columbus is ready. I have been at the helm of City Match since its inception up until about 8-9 years ago. I'm passing it off, and now you'll hear later on from Mr. Chad Abrish, who's the current executive director. I started City Match so I could know when I was sitting in Boston responsible for infant mortality rates that had a 3- and 4-fold differential in black versus white infant mortality. where the infant death rate for black babies was 18.5. Unconscionable. But were we ready to actually make change? And I see that the 5 things are lining up here in this town that make me so hopeful. And this is your time, Columbus. You've done a lot of stuff, but this is your time. Because you have a really good reason about why you want to be able to bring this infant mortality rate down and eliminate, or at least significantly put a dent in the disparity. You have articulated very clear results in what you expect by when. You have agreed to come to the table as a task force to take on this leadership role that is not somebody else's job. And you are willing to take the heat because this comes with risk. Because it's going to be a tough thing to do, and it could look like you fail. So you're putting your reps on the line by coming and staying here. And you're willing to push for the resources to make it happen, from the city, from private foundations, from the feds and other ones. So let me just give you a tool that if you get stuck along the way, says the stewardess or flight attendant here, getting us safely on our flight, you may want to employ something called community readiness tenting, something that we invented at City Match a while ago and doing our work together in cities. Imagine you could answer the scale of 1 to 5. Well, how strong is our reasoning for actually being at this table today? 1 being, I don't know, and 5 being clear. Imagine if we asked the same question about, well, who's going to do what? What risks and rewards are there? What are the results we know we're going to get? How clear is it? Do we have the resources to make it happen? Other communities get to this table and say, we have to do something about infant mortality. I don't care what it takes. I won't sleep for 100 years. I'll sacrifice my home. And no matter what there is. But no one really gets a sense of why. There's no clear metrics and no resources to get it done. And we call that a nice balanced target. It'll get you started, but it will never last. And this is how most infant mortality initiatives happen in communities, with passion, but no structure and no support. Make sense? Take a look at this pattern, though. Imagine if the task force comes out with the perfect report, but it's really not clear who's going to get anything done. And no one is really willing to do the hard work if you're going to start taking on racism or poverty or educational attainment or housing. So you've got the perfect report 7 months from now, and nobody gets stuff done. Also a failure. This is what I think you want. I think you want to go to Palladian power, so that you're able to say, we know why, we know so what, we know who's going to do what, we're willing to balance the risk and rewards, and we will garner adequate resources. If you find that you are floundering, tent yourselves. Figure out which of these dimensions are getting in your way. Make sense? I'm also optimistic because it's getting better out there. We've had a 12% decline in the last 6 years, particularly for neonatal and post-neonatal mortality. We've had a decline overall at 16% in non-Hispanic black women. Babies born to non-Hispanic white men have dropped by 12%, so it's actually a faster rate going on and decline among black women than white women. So things are happening already. You can catch the wave. Another reason to be optimistic. I'm optimistic because there's so much stuff happening nationally. Oh my gosh, this is our time. So Best Baby Zones, which looks at a community-based, place-based work that you'll hear more about in one of your future sessions, including Cincinnati. The National Healthy Start Initiative has just hit the 3.0 button and ready to do new work. And applications were just submitted, including several from Ohio. We've got work happening overall in the Health Equity Institute from City Match and Kellogg that's doing an Ohio-specific institute. This is the first in the country to talk about racism and structural determinants and social dynamics. Have you heard about the Big Ten initiative? Nebraska is here, Wisconsin's here, Ohio State is here, right? Big Ten, great for football. what if Big Ten took on infant mortality? The community work into the Council on Interinstitutional Collaboration is about to hear the Big Ten could maybe play a major part in taking on healthy babies. That's a newbie coming up. And Ohio would, of course, be in a lead in the Big Ten on that. You also have the Collaboration for Innovation Impact Coin and a new maternal health initiative, both coming from the federal government, of which we have local involvement in Region 7, including Dr. James, who co-leads the Health Equity Group. And the Maternal Health Initiative was just announced on Monday of this week federally to start to look at women's health and maternal mortality. Women are dying in childbirth still in this country. So I'm optimistic because you're doing stuff here while stuff is happening nationally, and you can align them. You don't have to invent it. And I'm optimistic because I look at New York City and I see that the black infant mortality rate in New York City is lower than the white infant mortality rate in my town of Milwaukee. Who knew that would be possible? So if that is possible, it can be possible here. And I'm a little worried. For all of my enthusiasm, my energy, my optimism, pragmatically and realistically, I'm worried. Has anybody ever seen this statue? Anybody know where it is? Where is it? You've seen it? Kansas City, Missouri. I love in the Contemporary Art Museum. I apologize for not putting a slide up of your fabulous art here in Columbus, but you know, you don't often find a perfect slide that art imitates life. I am worried. Let me tell you why I'm worried. Because we should go and fasten our seatbelts and put up our tray tables and probably turn off electronics, although we're not sure why, and move on. Infant mortality is what business calls a wicked problem. It's a wicked problem because there's lots of different people saying lots of different things about it. We're not talking about the same thing at the same time. And there's a lot of opinions about what the problem is. It's racism. No, it's co-sleeping. No, it's obesity. No, it's quality of care in the NICU. No, it's unintended pregnancy and family planning. No. It is yes, and. But as you noted, it's so complex that we get to be talking past each other. So we're going to have to harness it and make it clear because it's wicked and it has a large economic burden. And I'm over here working with Milwaukee Succeeds, which is the how to have 0 to 3 and early childhood and educational attainment and high school graduation. Education folks are at the blue ribbon table, not talking at all to the infant mortality folks over. So we got to be able to connect it with other things. I'm a little worried, and I borrowed the slide from City Match because it has been projected if we just keep on doing what we're doing, and we don't do anything strategically or remarkably different, by the time the rate of infant deaths for whites intersects with the rates of infant deaths for blacks, the year will be 2063. 2063. If we just keep on doing what we're doing. And how many lives lost could have been saved? This is another part of the unacceptable. If we just keep the same pace going, even around very preterm births, it'll take somewhere into 2009 or 2110, 100 years from now, to be able to narrow the gap in prematurity, extreme prematurity. I about you, but I'm not waiting 100 years. I'm not waiting until 2063. And Columbus is not waiting, and that's why it's brilliant that you set this very aggressive goal, because if you just do according to what you think the projections will be, it's totally not soon enough. So it is complex. Please know that there's no one thing that you will be able to do as a task force. None. You can't find a magic single piece, but you can find a strategic combination of things to do that will be synergistic with each other. That's your goal, is to figure out what's that portfolio of stuff, as opposed to thinking, it's one thing, and know that it will take time, and no one person or sector can fix it. So we've been in this complexity trying to frame it, and some of you have seen this approach to life course, at least stretching it out over time. And then I've been seeing some more recent work by a colleague that basically says, well, all right, let's take a look at all of the structural pieces. I don't know about you, I look at that and I think, that's too much. And then if I talk to women in focus groups in complexity, some will say it's transportation because the bus line doesn't come and the bus wasn't here and I've got 3 kids. And they gave me an appointment at 10:20 for prenatal care and I got there at 10:40 and they sent me home because I missed my appointment. No, and I've got issues related to feeling safe where I'm going to the clinic and I'm just exhausted and I don't know where to get prenatal vitamins. Women's voices will tell you it's complex as well. It's an old New Yorker cartoon, but I find a lot of us who've been doing this infant mortality thing look at all that complexity and we say, oh yeah, well I can see that's clear. Your job is to make it clear for your neighbor next door. Make it in a way that when you're sitting in church and someone says, you're on the task force. So what's the problem? And you say infant mortality and they say, what's that? And you say, what are you going to say? In a way that doesn't get their eyes glazed over and they've got 14 PowerPoint slides. Right? You know? I'm going to talk about AJ. And talk about baby Will. You've got to be able to put it in terms that people can get the complexity but still understand it. So we better be able to tell this story effectively. And these slides and these reports, most folks have no idea what we're talking about. And I'd love to see Columbus get this one right about communication. Because that's where the will come when people get the story behind the numbers. This is how the story's being told in Milwaukee. Clear, right? It's a very complicated slide. The part of the slide that ticks me off the most is someone, before I got there, set a goal that it'll be acceptable to have a black infant mortality rate in the next 5 years of only 12. I find that to be underestimating the capacity of my new community. And that the gap can still be acceptable where it is. And they set a goal of only 9.4 by the year 2017. You're daring to go to 6 because that's what the national goal is by 2020. Don't budge from that. The other part of the story that's being told in Milwaukee is that we have 100 babies that die every year. And the only thing that gets covered is unsafe sleep. Mostly women of color, mostly overweight, are presumed to have some substance impairment, sleep with their babies and smother them, and that's why babies are dying in Milwaukee. That's the headline. You get to control the headline. You get to tell the story. Because I'm not discounting any of those 15 babies who died of unsafe sleeping conditions. But the reality is the bulk of it is prematurity. And if you look at those lines, at least in my town, it hasn't budged 10, 20, 30 years. So I'd like you to think about telling the story a little bit differently. And I'd like to encourage us to go back to a methodology that we used in City Match called perinatal periods of risk, where we really talked about telling the story this way. Which babies are dying? Are they the babies that can fit in the palm of your hand? These are our babies of extreme prematurity. They're the 1,500 grams or less. That's 3.5 pounds or less. These are these tiny ones. This is the prematurity that's driving. 39 weeks is great, but the bottom line is it's our tiniest who are dying. So is this the problem? Or are we going to put the heels of our hands together? And these are babies weighing enough to be a little bit larger, but are they dying in the first critical month of life? Or are they dying later? Which babies are we talking about? PPOR allows us to sort this out. And if we can sort it out and use other tools like this, we can then begin to deconstruct the complexity and say our story is going to be about maternal health, and we better start thinking about women before, between, and beyond pregnancy, even the prevention of future chronic disease or future obesity in their kids and themselves, less diabetes. You get to tell the story. But infant mortality is not a story. It's a bundle. You've got to undo the bundle and figure out what's in there. So you can distinguish between, is it safe sleep and or is it larger social determinants of health? And last, I want you to look at this notion about alignment and leverage for collaboration. The beauty of your task force is you've dared to bring together the diverse parts of a larger public health system so that you can take on the issues of aligning the connection between neighborhoods of opportunity and where babies are dying in the context of economic vitality for your community. And you can begin to learn about the reduction in teen pregnancy that's already happened here by collective impact to see where you're going to go next. In my last 2 minutes, I'm going to give you just my top 10 things that I'm going to give you as operating instructions, and then we'll take off. Please dare to envision wild success. Why would we shoot any lower? Figure the way to sustain your momentum and energy, because this is a long-term deal that have lots of chapters along the way. This will require moral courage. And that's what is the fiber and soul of this task force. Mind the gap. I call, hearkening back to a former colleague from CDC, I call disparity an opportunity gap. If we mind the gap, like in British English, which means careful for the step that you don't fall down. If you mind the gap, let's mind that opportunity gap so we narrow it and have opportunity for all. Freshly frame this. Come up with a way that is not just infant mortality, because it doesn't stick. People don't get what it is. So whatever it is you're going to do that makes it the leading edge, has some indicator that you're going to stake your point in the sand, something which you say it has communication power that people get it, proxy power that people will understand if you do that, the rest will come along, and data power. Can you measure it? Frame it wisely. Align what's already going on in your community around arts and culture and urban agriculture and library transformation and criminal justice and social entrepreneurship and innovation. If infant mortality stays in the hinterland and the rest of the city grows, babies will die. Wise metrics will harness the power of your data. You have so much data. Share the accountability for outcomes. Well, that's a health thing, but we're in education. We're not responsible for that. Blur the lines. There is a new urbanism happening in the nation. Columbus should be on the forefront of it. And then finally and last, practice what Bill Fahey, one of my other great mentors, said to me as a hallmark of our work in public health: unwarranted optimism. We're not quite sure how we're going to do it, but we can't not believe that we're going to get there overall. Now, I am here as somebody who can tell you it can be done. It is being done. Let's get it done, and you can count on me to be part of making it come true. Thank you so much. Until the break, I'd be open to 1 or 2 or 3 questions or observations from our members of our esteemed task force to start, and then more broadly in the audience. Could you introduce yourself beforehand again, even though we saw you on the photograph? We want to make sure that you're here in person. Mr. Hurd.
Thank you. I'm Nathan Hurd, and I buried a kid, so I think that's one of the main reasons I'm here. You said a word early on that struck me, and I was hoping to learn more about what you meant by it. I think I heard you say the word segregation. I think I heard you say the word I live in one of the most hyperly segregated cities in the country. I'd never heard that before, and I was wondering if you could just explain a little more what that means.
Absolutely. First of all, the metrics. If we look upon both census tract and zip code, and this time we do it by zip code, and you look at what proportion of the people who have a residence in this area are of which racial and ethnic group. And if you look at a map, and I'd be glad to forward it on, of Milwaukee area, Milwaukee County, you will find that it is the most intensely all white or all black, or in some cases all Latino, but mostly all white, all black. That means that, and there's whole swaths, which means you can be a person of white, and I would call white privilege for the most part, in Milwaukee, and never, ever see a person of color in your daily life. And you can live a life in the inner city, the central city of Milwaukee, which is 85, 90, 90% black. And because it's so demarcated and so encapsulated that it's like a big donut hole in the center of the city, you can actually, and there are highways built that you don't even have to go through, because that's why the highways are built. That's the structural impediment, the structural determinant, and I would say, and others will say, sort of structural racism in the way that we've compartmentalized our cities so people don't own into, well, my babies aren't dying. So if we're in a hyper-segregated city and I want to have something that works in a given community and it's disproportionately going to benefit this donut hole in the central city of Milwaukee, then why would my white taxpayers pay for it? Because it's not in my block. Those aren't my babies. Because it is also defined that black babies die and white babies don't, and you and I both know that that is false. Disproportionately high? Well, 35% of my city is African American. How is it possible? So we have to dispel the myths, reteach, unlearn to learn, and understand how do we bring these walls of segregation, structural segregation, down so we don't have a tale of two cities. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely.
Another question. Let me do the table coming around. Stand and introduce yourself, please, so we can hear you well.
Dr. Peck, I'm Shirley Cotter. I've been an ambassador for the people of light now since 1999. And my question to you is, if this task force is going to be effective and reach the public, does it not have to be honest? Even if it rejects truth, God is word, will, way, and spirit, it must be honest. I'm telling you, this was billed as a public meeting. There are only 3 kinds of gatherings: God-centered, public, and humanist. Public means you give rights to both the people of the light and people of the world. We people of the light are here because we dare not offend Almighty God, the ruler and the giver of life, light, love, and liberty. But you've ignored us when you don't allow us to call on Him for His wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and unity. Dr. Peck, should not people of the light be given their respect and representation?
Well, I'm going to assume it's a rhetorical question, in that I think you already know the answer that you would like me to give you. But allow me to say thank you so much for a bold question. As a woman of faith, I bring my faith into my work, but I also am a public servant, so I keep my world somewhat separate, because it's my duty to do so as an employee of the state of Wisconsin. I will tell you personally, I want to respond to you, that when I do my work for infant mortality, I remember the 3 blasts of the shofar that is sounded at times of great opportunity and great danger. And this is one of those moments that I will borrow from my tradition into a secular space as a ritual that might be useful, that might be a way of responding to you. The first blast of the shofar is the call to greatness. It allows us to recognize that there are powers that are bigger than us. It brings us to a point of humility. For some, that is a God. For others, that may be their ancestors. But there are forces that are greater than us. So humility is the first blast. And it will do this task force and this community good to enter this space with humility. The second that comes forth of the blast is the blast of remembrance. There are many things that have come before us. Many babies have died before this moment. Many efforts have been done, and we build on their shoulders and on their tombs and on their hopes and dreams. And the third is a call to action, which you have heard today from particularly the lead of the City Council and the co-chairs of this task force, that says, given this moment of humility, given everything that has brought us to this day, it is our time to act and to act well. I assume integrity to this process. I assume positive intent. I am no fool to know that infant mortality has been politicized, ideologized for many generations. We are smart enough to navigate that. But I honor you with the respect that you bring to this table. Honesty, of course. Accountability, as important. Hope and integrity, essential. So let's hear the blast of whatever shofar, whatever call to action is there, and get it done. About 2 minutes late, and that's not a football 2 minutes. I want to be back later in the third half of car talk, so to speak, to lead a panel. You need to refract and take some stuff in, breathe, pee, do whatever you need to do to come back and be present, and I pass it back on to our co-chair.
Dr. Peck, thank you very much for that passionate and motivational opening to this process. So we will take a break. There are restrooms. If you go out this door, there's restrooms on both ends of the hallway. You could be back here at 11. We'll hear from Dr. James, and then we're going to have a panel discussion.